Welcome back to Tranquility du Jour, nourishing conversations about living a full and meaningful life with doses of tranquility. I'm your host, Kimberly Wilson, bringing you tranquility since 2005 through this podcast. Today, I have Tim back on the show. We are freshly back from our 5-week adventure, and we're talking about the experience and answering some of your questions.
I think saying that we are freshly back might be overstating things.
Not so freshly back.
Exactly. Yeah. I took a little nap. I'm cogent enough to speak on a podcast, but barely.
Right. Yeah, we're both feeling like a bit buzzy, where you just, it's like I hear and feel the movement of the highway,
Yeah.
Even though we've been off of the highway for hours now.
I feel the same way too. Yeah. It's a little sleep deprivation. It's a little being over caffeinated. And the vibration of the road is pretty funny.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, since the last time we were talking about this podcast, it was right before I hosted TDJ Live, right? So on June 20th, Father's Day. And, since then, of course, it's been quite an adventure. It's been a little over 2 weeks since that. And one big thing is I had a birthday, which was lovely.
Happy birthday.
Thank you for all the help in celebrating.
Birthday month is over.
I know, it's just so sad. I have to wait 11 months for another birthday month. But, the other thing that it was just a total treat is after we left Oakland, which was the next day after we recorded the last podcast, we ended up in an Airbnb. I mean, we didn't just stumble upon it. We had found this. Tim had found this months before. And this tiny little cabin in the woods. Literally, like, the drive into it was like a 10-minute drive into the...
Yeah, off of a back road.
Off of a back road.
Yeah.
It was gravel road into the cabin.
And it was remote, but at the same time, we had really robust internet, which allowed us to work and, just to be ensconced in the redwoods. That was really special. And we were, about 12 minutes to Point Arena and about 25 to Wallowa.
Right.
So,
and an hour to Mendocino.
And an hour to Mendocino, and then a touch more than that to Fort Bragg. So it's like all these different cool, unique California towns, each with a different character than the other. And boy, we drove the heck out of the California coast for that week and a half.
Absolutely. And, that's one of, I think the biggest highlights for me. When was I last on the California coast? I'm trying to think. Was it 2013, the Tranquility Tour?
Probably, yeah.
Oh, no, 2017. We were there because we were in San Francisco. So we got to see some of the coast. But yeah, it's been a long time and it's just so stunning. And I think what's so interesting, I just wrote about this in today's blog post, which is Birthday Reflections, where I just talk a little bit about the final days, really, and then, of course, Birthday Reflections. But is right around the time that we were driving the California coast, we had just finished watching the Halston Netflix series. And it talked about how, the last 18 months of his life, he just spent driving up and down the coast. And I was like, you get it, it's so, like, what is it? It's just freaking water. But there's something about it that is just like awe-inspiring.
Yeah. Also, it's undeveloped in so much of it. And that's really special because I think in a lot of places, the coastlines are really developed and there's lots of souvenir shops and hotels and condos and things like that. Not to say that doesn't exist on the California coast too, but there are long stretches of unspoiled, wild coastline in that part of Northern California. And it's really special to behold. And it was a lot of fun to just be there for days, week and a half even, to experience that and to drive up and down it a few times and get to know it. And I, of course, know it by bicycle. So it was a lot easier to do it by car and like cover what would normally take me days in a couple of hours. So that was nice.
Absolutely. And you know what is really interesting kind of about the trip, and we talked about it, it felt a bit charmed in the fact that the weather was always phenomenal. And, poor Portland and Seattle has gotten that intense heat. Well, we were out of it. I mean, whenever we got to Seattle, it was 84 degrees, and they were saying that was the hottest day of the year so far, right? And now, of course, it's been off the charts. But, we were basically in pretty intense layers the entire trip and until we started driving east, so I had a hat most of the time. I had boots, a sweater coat, so it was always in like the 60s.
Yeah. I today, as I was, sweating my butt off unpacking the car here in humid West Virginia, tucked in one of the corners was my puffy vest that I was a staple of what I was wearing for really almost the entire month, with a few exceptions in Seattle, as you had mentioned, and I think in Portland as well, but especially on the California coast. Oh man, we were living in layers. I remember the day that it was really, really hot in Portland and Seattle. I've got family in both places. I was getting the updates. Oh, it's 110 or whatever, and I was like, I literally just started a fire in our fireplace.
Right.
So,
yeah, it was crazy. You guys, it had this like one of those black stoves. What are they called? Because it's a fireplace, but it's like a special
wood burning stove.
Wood burning stove, yes, but it's a stove, right? So not a fireplace. I guess that's the difference. And but it was just so oh my gosh, it was just so great, and it was so cozy. They had no heat, so there was a little space heater that I kept on my feet during the week, pretty much whenever I was working. But then, at night we would have a fire in the stove, and it was just so lovely.
Yeah, the old joke. I guess it was a joke that the coldest winter I ever spent is a summer in San Francisco. Well, same is true on the California coast broadly. It's during the summer it gets chilly and stays chilly and consistently cold, and it's kind of nice because we both like the fog and that nip in the air. That was really, really nice. It was, I think. Something I'll definitely take away from all of this is how much I really enjoy that kind of weather. I mean, I remember we were in Point Arena getting a second dinner because we got pizza, and then we were like, oh, let's go to the
dessert.
Yeah, let's go to was it the Chowder House?
Chowder House, yeah.
And just being up there, and the wind was whipping, and we had to be outside because of the dogs, and it was straight up cold. And it's just like, it seems inconceivable that was about a week ago. And might have been a week ago today, if memory serves. And, now we're sitting here in sweaty, muggy 80 plus degrees, and the sun's almost down. So kind of crazy.
Well, it is because, as we just started talking before we began recording, we were like, I can't believe last Wednesday we were in California, right? And now it's Monday, we're in West Virginia, but everything that has been covered, right, in that time. So, of course, it was California to Arizona to New Mexico to Texas to Oklahoma. And, that landscape is just phenomenal. And, of course, it went from 66 degrees to 100?
We hit 100. At the highest point we hit was 100. But the craziest thing was we were in Lake Havasu, Arizona. It's just over the California line. And it was 1:30 in the morning. And it was 99 degrees.
Oh my gosh. Is that where you saw the coyote?
That's where I saw the coyote.
Yeah, which is crazy. So we drove, there all the way back to Oklahoma to pick up Mookie, who my parents had so graciously watched for the whole time that we were away, which is just so, so sweet. And stayed there a couple days and then drove. We left yesterday around noon. 12:30.
Yeah, that's right.
And then got here, what about 1:30 or 2:30 today?
Yeah.
So.
And 2 overnight drives where I basically started driving and just I can do the night owl bit. It's sort of my nature, and that sort of made this whole thing possible. Kimberly got to sleep in the back and took over for, I think the sweet spot we figured was an hour and a half. That's what I needed at any given point. It's when I gave up the wheel, I would sleep for an hour and a half, and then I would be like, okay, I'm fine. I'm back behind the wheel because I'm a terrible passenger. Kimberly is a great driver, but I am terrifically motion sick. And driving is the only way that I know that I won't feel that way. So yeah, I've spent a lot of time behind the wheel, but the lacrosse, the car build out, it was a success, and it helped make this possible. Few MVPs.
Yeah.
I think the car.
Yes.
The car did amazing. considering the abuse we put it through.
Right.
Your parents.
Yes.
Our neighbor for taking care of
Jackson.
Yeah, I think those are the co-MVPs of this trip. Anybody else?
Oh my gosh. Well, the dogs did very good.
They are co-MVPs. I agree.
They are co-MVPs. I mean, considering, we took them on a train. We took them on this like old locomotive train they allowed dogs, skunk train in Fort Bragg. And, we took them to all these meals and, they were so good and they're just so malleable, from one location to one environment to one Airbnb, because we stayed in 4 Airbnbs, only one hotel room. We stayed in the car a few nights.
Did the campground that one night too.
Campground.
The cabin.
Yep. Oh, yeah, the camper cabin.
Yeah.
So, it was, they were just great. I mean, as long as they're with us, they're totally fine. So.
Yeah. And if you ever are worried about, being lonely, get a couple of pugs because people will come up and talk to you all the time.
Yes.
Or get a folding Brompton bike, which I also have. So, you get a lot of interesting conversation that way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny. Do you remember though, this was in Oakland, and it was our first night we were out to eat, and a mom and her 2 kids come up, and the little boy was like, "I'm scared of that one. He only has one eye."
I remember that. And then there's also I think another little boy who's like, "I'm very sad because he only has one eye."
Right. Yes.
Range of emotions over Gizmo's ocular situation.
Exactly. I'm like, I don't know what happened to it. It was before we got him, but he's fine. He sees really well out of the one eye. But you can tell they're just like, they don't understand. They're like, where is the eye?
Yeah, it's a big mystery. It's a big mystery. Hey, we got questions.
So we had 2 questions. I mean, one was creating a budget for a long trip, and the other one was, is there anything we would do differently?
Which one do you want to tackle first?
You want to start with budget?
Yes. I think that the big cost for us that we knew we had some control over was lodging. And so we went into this thinking, okay, it's roughly a week in each of these places. And of course, we ended up adding on the Point Arena place at the end. So that ended up being a little bit longer, just calendaring wise. But I think that we just approached it thinking, okay, this is how much we're willing to spend for lodging. And everything kind of flowed from there. I think that this was less expensive. This was priced like a vacation, even though we worked. But I think that both of us felt like that we didn't travel at all, really, with some minor exceptions in the last year and a half. So this kind of occupied that space. All of the long weekends or week-long trips that we would have taken kind of fit into this. But I don't know. I was surprised that my credit card bill didn't make me want to run away, which I thought was pretty good. But I think that one of the things that I liked about it is that even though we were kind of mindful of our spending in the moment, we didn't need to worry about it because I think we were mindful about how we were spending things. I don't know. How do you feel? Yeah, no.
Well, and it's hard to remember what the Airbnbs cost because we booked those early on. That was the first thing we did after we got my parents to agree to watch Mookie, right? It was Airbnb. But I think overall it wasn't that expensive, definitely not compared to a hotel. And then from there, we just built on it. Of course, there's gas, right? So on the California coast, it was $4.50 or something. And then in Oklahoma, it was $2.50, so.
Yeah, filling up the tank would be anywhere from, less than $30 in low-cost gasoline states to nearly $70 in California, on the coast in California, because it was cheaper in other parts of the state. So yeah, that varied widely and wildly.
Both, yes. And, the other thing, of course, is eating out. And we did a lot of that. So I think initially, I hadn't really thought about that. But of course, if you're in a new city, I mean, yeah, you can stay home and make a meal, and we did that a couple times. But I think on average, we wanted to, we were maybe meeting out with people, or we were, wanting to go out and explore.
Yeah.
And that was really a total treat. And it allowed us to really do the full experience thing. And so I think if you're thinking about budget, it's like you kind of start with like the big piece, right? Like the anchors, which is like, where am I going and where do I want to stay? And for us, it was all about kind of location. So everything was walkable, pretty much, except for in Oakland, we were up on the hill, in the hills. I mean, you could have walked it, but it would have been a really tearful climb up. And then, then of course in Point Arena, where we had the 10-minute driveway of gravel there, that was not walkable. But Seattle and Portland was, which made it really easy. And, so thinking about those sorts of things. And then, you want a full kitchen if you want to be making some meals, or at least having your breakfast or things like that. And usually, we would do, things like that at home if we had breakfast.
I did my coffee almost exclusively in our rentals, and that's A, I'm picky and weird, but like B, that's a big savings. But I think the other thing is that one of the costs for us was dog care for Mookie, and your parents helped to replace. I mean, that would have been a huge chunk, and that freed up funds to be able to do other things. So again, co-MVPs of the trip. So
and we knew he had great care, and we constantly were like, how's Mook? What's Mook doing? And so we got all these, photographic updates, which we would not have gotten with like somebody else would have just cut us off at some point.
And in exchange, Kimberly's mom had Kimberly on Find My Friends on the iPhone. So she would creepily say, how's Del Taco in Bakersfield, California? And we'd be like, what?
How do you know?
Price you pay.
No, so that was great. But so, from there, I think then building out, like, are there things you want to see? On our way out, I had gotten tickets to the Denver Art Museum to see an exhibit. In Seattle, I got you tickets to the museum. In Oakland, we got tickets to see, or I got dinner reservations for the jazz, so things along those lines. Those are, I think, once you've have your anchors of where you're going and where you're staying, then building in what sorts of entertainment do you want to enjoy and check out? Are there certain exhibits or certain, musicians or, what have you, festivals that are happening that you want to be able to attend? And, that is just fun little perks of the experience. And then, what's your food budget? Mm-hmm. So I have gotten some updates from mint.com that's like, you are over on your fuel, things like that.
Well,
so,
of course.
Of course I am, right? But, overall, considering we did almost 9,000 miles.
4 miles shy of 9,000 miles officially. Yeah. One other thing that I think that we do that maybe other people would do differently is we don't buy a lot of things, souvenirs, stuff, things like that. Except for you, watermelon water. You bought a lot of that.
Yes.
Except those were like $1 a piece.
That's consumables, but yeah.
But yeah, I got a few vinyl records that I kind of found in various places, and that wasn't terribly expensive, and it was easy to haul around. But like if you're a big shopper or souvenir purchaser, you got a budget for that, and that's something that we don't tend to do a lot of. So again, money's fungible. You can kind of move it into other things. So we spent it on going out to eat and to do these experiences. So yeah, that's choices that you can make.
Yeah. It's funny because in the blog post today, I even put in there, I mean, the only thing I bought were gifts, right? 4 books, and 3 of them are very small, and a candle, and that crochet caftan that I got for myself as a little treat. Other than that, I mean, that's it. And we were gone for 5 weeks. So yeah, it's like, by no means, I'm not somebody who likes to accumulate sorts of things like that. But if you are, no judgment there, but just know that, of course that adds on to the budget. And then you also have to have space for it and you have to haul it around, which you may think, oh, well, if you have a car, it's not a big deal, but it is. Even finding space for like all the gifts that I picked up along the way, starting at the Denver Art Museum, it's like, you got to take that all over the country or wherever you're going.
Yeah, everything's an opportunity cost. So, yeah. But I think that this is also something that it's almost sort of like an investment in memories too, that we were able to work, which allowed us to extend this to be weeks long as opposed to days long. And this is the type of trip that I think will sit next to our 2013 RV trip, with the same amount of status, the same type of memories, and the same type of stuff. So it's the type of trip that pays dividends down the line too. So, how much is it worth to you to have a memory like that? I mean, for us, it was, I think whatever we spent is well worth it.
Yeah. No, I agree. And you're right. I mean, we didn't travel at all during the pandemic at all. And so until we were vaccinated, right?
Well, we did the coast. We did Eastern Shore.
Oh, we did go down to Eastern Shore. You're right. Yeah. Last September. Yeah.
But other than that, we really, we stayed in between our two places, which again, we've stated before, we were very, very lucky to have that opportunity and set up for us. And I know a lot of folks didn't have that. But, we typically travel a lot. And of course we didn't, because that was the responsible thing to do.
Right. Yeah. So we kind of made up for it over these last 5 weeks.
What about the other question was?
Yeah, so the other question was, what would we do differently? And it's funny, because I've kind of sat with that since I saw that earlier today. And I don't know that I have an answer for that. I mean, the only thing that comes to mind, which I've mentioned in the previous podcast, was just surprised I didn't have more reading and writing time, more downtime, even though there's a lot of downtime looking out the window during the long drives. But there wasn't, just the kind of like sitting and reflecting sort of space. Because, when I was done working and you were done, then wanted to go into town and have a meal or, enjoy the evening. And so that's the only thing. And you might think oh, well, that's downtime. And it definitely is, but it's also moving about. And so I think, just there's something about sitting in front of a fire with a cup of tea and your journal and a book, that I just kind of missed that time. And again, the tricky thing, right, is started the day on East Coast time. So I'd get up, start my ballet class, or start with an early client, which was really not early, but it was early on the West Coast. And then we would, finish in, around, say, 4:30, 5:30 Pacific time. And then we would have that evening, which is great. But then, it's the entire day is taken, which is lovely. No complaints. But I'm just saying it was one of those things where you're where is my downtime? So I think I would maybe interject a little bit, maybe more spaciousness, maybe even between the cities. And I think, too, on getting back, it's lovely that we're back Monday afternoon. But we have a pretty intense week. We start early tomorrow. So I think I would also add in an extra day. Mm-hmm. The other thing, too, is, I was working up until I drove out here for us to start the trip that Thursday night before Memorial Day weekend. So there was just never any space between all of the travel, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I feel like that is that's a takeaway I think that you have for many of your trips.
Yes, always, right?
You tend to fill space with things to do. So that's
observation.
an ongoing thing for you. But yeah, I think I'm sort of the same, that I'm not sure if I would have changed anything structurally about this trip, which is kind of remarkable because I'm not sure if I'm not sure if I'm surprised that it worked as planned. I guess I am a little surprised, and that it checked all the boxes. It took care, you said we had kind of a charmed trip, and we kind of did. We would get parking spots. I think we said this on the prior episodes in part 1 or part 2, that we would drive up to a place and we would literally be able to park as close as possible to the place. And it's just sort of in major cities.
Right. It was crazy.
It was, we really had that kind of charmed existence. And we did have that one issue with the car, but it not only kind of figured itself out, it resolved itself completely. Even the check engine light turned off after a few hundred more miles. So it's even the weird stuff resolved itself, and, it worked out pretty well. So I think I'm with you. yeah, I feel like I visited lots of people. I got to see friends and family, and you and I got a ton of together time, which was another fun thing. The dogs, and yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I mean, I guess the only thing is, could we have done more? We had some other reasons to come back, not the least of which was our dog and cat care was coming to a close.
Right,
so
right.
I think that was a piece of it. But, I do think that we certainly could be capable of doing remote work for a lengthy period of time. I think that this proved that. I think that we could do it in a different way, a less aggressive way, maybe, maybe not as far away, or maybe doing it with a different kind of mindset, more spaciousness, things like that. But other than that, I enjoyed it. So yeah, I'm kind of at a loss to say what I would change, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I have a couple quotes that I wanted to share that we kind of captured throughout the trip that I thought were funny.
Kimberly loved to write these down.
Yeah, well, and it happened maybe a few weeks in, and I was like, why wasn't I writing these down? Because sometimes, just things are said and you're like, it's just a funny moment. So the first one is I go into a gas station in Fortuna. Is that correct?
Fortuna,
California. And, it's kind of like, it's not like a big Love's, right? It's like this small, like really kind of tiny gas station, kind of convenience store. And I go in, I was looking for you, but I was like, do you have any Pellegrino? And the woman behind the counter started laughing at me. And I was like, okay, I guess that's a no. But, it was like one of those moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, what she must think of me,
Humboldt County people.
Humboldt County. We have the New York plates, it's like, I was like, oh my gosh, this lady completely hates me. And I didn't need Pellegrino. I was looking for it for you, but I got the flack.
They thought we were some snooty city slickers from New York or San Francisco or something. It was pretty funny.
But I'm like, who just laughs whenever you ask if there's a product? The other thing, this was kind of funny. This was in, oh God, I keep wanting to say Monticello, but what's the name of the?
Mendocino.
I don't know why I can't get that. Okay. But anyway, so you were eating a croissant and you're like feeding some to the dogs. And I said to Gizzy, no more croissant, Gizzy. You've had enough. And I'm like, okay, A, he's deaf. He cannot hear me.
Cannot hear them.
B, who feeds their dog croissants? Actually, I'm sure many people do. But it was just one of those moments where I was like, this is just like a weird reality.
Our dogs are very spoiled.
Okay, this is another thing. You came out of a place in, oh my gosh, was it Texas? Because it had all this rattlesnake stuff. But you came out and you're like, you're going to love this place. It's full of crap. And we were just going in to use the bathroom, but it was like they had, all sorts of things. Like it was like a trading post sort of.
Yeah.
Everything from moccasins.
Yeah, roadside kind of souvenir stand kind of thing that they have billboards for miles. One of those kind of places. If you're familiar with I-95 on the east coast of the U.S., it's south of the border but more southwesty and full of crap.
And I did, I just looked at a few things and I was like, oh, I could see why he would say that. Because sometimes it's like old-fashioned candies and, all sorts of like stuff. But yeah, there was all this like rattlesnake stuff, like keychain holders and belt buckles and So I was just like, what is this place? Anyway, I just thought that was a funny line. And this is just a random one. And this will be my last one. But it was like, you said, one of my favorite things about you is that you ride hard for Mick Jagger's solo albums.
This is true. She does. The only person in the world who refers to the Rolling Stones as Mick Jagger's side project.
Yeah, if you guys have not listened to Mick Jagger's solo albums, they're so good. They're very old, but they're so good. And they're kind of some of my favorite music, and Tim always makes fun of me.
They're all right. They're all right.
But yeah, so those are just like some funny moments and just some things that I was like, you got to write this stuff down because there's no way to remember it. I would have totally forgotten about the croissant.
Sorry, Bella's adjusting. She is lying down on my tent for reasons that are unclear to me. But she loves the tent. Actually, it's not unclear. She loves my tent. I think we talked about that in part 2, didn't we?
Right. How she was like running into it in the redwoods.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's trying to get comfortable right now. But yeah, I mean, that's it. I think that, I really wanted to share from a takeaways experience. I feel like we've been back a few hours. So I think it's going to take a little while to really like let this sink in and soak in and go through photos and what have you. And I've tried to share photos in the month in review, of course, of June. And then in today's post, which is July 5th, and a Birthday Reflections. But, just gorgeous, gorgeous settings. And I think, too, it's just a great reminder of the importance of getting out in nature, being around water, seeing wildlife. We saw a skunk. That was new
Yeah, skunk was new. We talked about the bear.
We saw elk.
We saw an elk in Elk, California.
In Elk, California, yeah. So, there's just something about it. So freaking therapeutic. So therapeutic. But takeaways, I think, probably to come, right?
Yeah, I think that I'm glad you wrote down the quotes because those are always fun and evoke good memories. And it's just, I think this is the type of thing that'll just percolate for a while. But I do really think that like that 2013 trip, we'll talk about this trip for a really long time.
Absolutely. And thank you guys so much for tuning in and following along the way and sending sweet kind of notes or posts on photos and what have you. It was nice to kind of feel like I was like bringing you along, and I appreciate all the sweet, sweet birthday wishes. So, so thoughtful. And so I wish you a wonderful week ahead. If you are free on Saturday, I'm doing a mid-year virtual retreat. Would love to have you join us for 3 hours of reflection, movement, and creativity. So wishing you a delicious and delightful week ahead. Thanks so much for tuning in.